So the owners bought in February last year. Nothing came up in the survey, but then this damp showed. Here's the survey. So this is the wall up to that level, and we're going to have a look outside, but apparently the ground level is quite raised. And then here we have a vent and some damp around here. It's damp proofed on the outside, but obviously that doesn't make any difference. It's a solid floor here. So this is the outside, and this decking is raised.
Yeah, but it's more over here because that's the vent, so it's kind of,
yeah.
It's more like this area.
There's been damp proofs against rising damp there, but so the specific issue with this type of paint is that can you see how it's very slightly bubbling up, and you've got zone.
Yeah.
You haven't got much in the way of cracking. I think what you've got on this is that it was an impermeable paint or semi-permeable paint, and a less permeable paint has been painted on top, perhaps at the time of the sale. It's quite often what people do is they just quickly whitewash everything, and what you need is an impermeable paint, because, or at least one that's less permeable than the internal paint. You can see some of my reports. I talk about it. But so what can happen is it becomes absorbed through the paint, and because it's got these little micro cracks. I mean, it's difficult to tell because it's been painted over. But do you see how it's rough in places?
Yeah.
And
like the bubble in here.
Yeah, exactly. And so the water gets in through that and then can't come out because some of the paint is impermeable and some is permeable, but it then goes inside, and you've got a very light brown stain. It's almost it's almost not visible. So I think what you're doing, you're getting a combination of the moisture coming through the paint. It's a very simple solution. Basically, you just repaint it with you want to sort of scratch it back as much as possible, wire brush it back as much as possible, and then paint it with an impermeable paint. Like Dulux do one, Zinza do one. Don't do a sort of standard Weather Shields type masonry paint.
The builder that did the repointing, he bought me a paint. I'll show you because I obviously haven't put it on yet because I wanted to have the survey done first.
This paint is branded as water resistant rather than impermeable. It allows some water to get in. It's difficult to tell on the outside, but this is the type of paint that I see going wrong most of the time. I would also say that you can see that there's moisture growing. There's moisture there because there's plant growing. And you do have a risk when you don't have some sort of plinth. You get a risk of water bouncing off the decking and then onto the wall. Although having said that, if it's really well painted, that you'll get rid of that problem. But this will need to be painted as well, because moisture can get through that. Although it's relatively impermeable, that it's still going to have some degree of permeability, and likewise on these ones. So relatively easy solution. But I think you're also getting condensation inside, and the fact that you've closed off the vent is part of the thing. I noticed that you've got this continuous flow extractor fan, so that's good. I can feel it coming through. I measure it, but you know, in a kitchen there's going to be some level of risk, and if you've got the paint stopping the water from evaporating out, the bricks become damp, and that dampness causes heat loss, which increases the risk of condensation. So anyway, we'll have a look a bit more of that later. So here we got examples of defects where they haven't painted over them, presumably because it was hard behind here, but they're still defects. And yet these ones have been painted over, but probably with a Weather Shield type, semi-permeable that allows the moisture in, but it's hiding the defects, so the water's getting trapped and can't evaporate out, so it goes into brick causes heat loss, and a small amount is obviously coming all the way through. So the difference between the permeability of the brick and the paint, and then equally behind here it isn't painted. They may be hygroscopic because this is an old chimney breast and it would have come all the way over. You've got rust up here, which tells me that you're getting condensation as well. You can see, well, I'll just double check it, but what looks like condensation dribble marks. Yeah, it's damp there as well. So all the things we talked about on the outside will be relevant to that. I don't think that that's caused by hygroscopic salts. It's too far from the chimney breast, but it could be. It's possible because this is all linked up underneath here. So if it was replastered, it could have happened during that replastering. But all the things that I'm recommending. So you want to deal with the penetrating damp and the condensation first, and then see what remains, and then deal with it as hygroscopic salts at a later stage. But it's benign, so it's more of a visual thing.
Okay.
So this is recycling. Still a lot of condensation everywhere, and well, we're early September. Nothing is working until this is switched on, presumably. Oh, I think your extractor fan's not working anymore. That's not going to help you. So this vent is now blocked. Damp there, but dry there. So this is dampness above a solid floor that's going into the corner there. I mean, it wouldn't be rising damp anyway, just because the shape is wrong. Anyway, it's been damp proofed on the outside, but condensation will form on the solid floor and move up. So here we are below ground from about there. It's just about, and this is all below ground, which is damp. And likewise over there, this is also below ground. Downstairs we have a PIV system, which, well, you know my thoughts on those. There's a dehumidifier, but not a very strong one, and then we got dampness on this wall and mould in the bedroom, particularly in this cupboard here, where it's on shoes and clothes, and it smells quite mouldy. That comes from a combination of heat loss and, well, primarily from insufficient ventilation or dehumidification and heat loss. Made worse by heat loss, that is. What I believe is you have three things going on. You have penetrating damp, and you've got a risk of penetrating damp on the outside, so the paint tissue. And you can see there's a very light colour there, which indicates the water coming through. Just a very small amount, but it's still there. But you've got, this is a chimney breast, and chimney breasts, when they were originally used for heating, they would use coal, and coal can emit what are called hygroscopic salts. So in particular calcium nitrate, which forms a form of condensation at 50% relative humidity. So you won't see that disappear until you drop the internal vapour levels below 50% for a prolonged period of time. And just like I was describing with the calibration jar, that salt that has a specific relative humidity of 75%, so calcium nitrate has a specific relative humidity of 50%. And it comes from coal primarily, burning of coal, historic, it's not current. But you can see there's a chimney breast when you look at it. And it forms that type of dampness, that looks like condensation, but hygroscopic salts are a form of condensation. So the reason I say it looks like condensation is that it's relatively colourless, it's got a very sharp edge, and it's distinctive, as opposed to if you go downstairs, it's rougher, it's not as distinctive, the damp downstairs.
Okay.
So that explains that. This one here is a combination of factors, but it's been damp proofed, but that's not dealing with, so it's having, you're getting condensation basically here. And it's forming on the cold floor, and it's rising up. Every form of dampness rises, but rising damp is very specifically groundwater, that's the water under the water table. So condensation, penetrating damp, all of those will rise up. So if condensation forms on the floor, it rises up. Now, in terms of ventilation, the bathroom vent isn't working at the moment. At least I couldn't get it working.
I don't know where you turned it off.
Well, if I do it here and then...
There's a button here, but I can't reach it. I don't know if maybe you can reach.
Yeah, sure. But do you turn it on or?
Well, I had turned it on, and I don't know whether I turned it off or whether it stopped working. Because it.
Oh, that works now.
Yeah, I kept meaning.
How long for? How long has it been off for?
Since I moved in, but then when I had my bathroom done, because I was like, oh, just take that off because it doesn't work, and then he said, oh, press the button. So I did have it on for about a week.
And when was that? Like a year ago, 2 years ago?
No, that was like a month ago.
Oh, okay. So this is
And then I must have
recent.
turned it off by accident.
Okay. The options here. This is moisture that's percolating down through from the outside. You can do things to improve the outside, like a plinth and so on. That's a sort of raised area of cement-based mortar that goes along. That will reduce the amount of moisture, but you're still below ground, and this building was originally designed for the water, the rainwater that's percolating down through the soil to evaporate through the brickwork, and you wouldn't have particularly noticed it, but it would have been there. So nothing has changed, but by putting plaster on it, you're reducing its ability to evaporate, so it's coming through specific areas, and also you're noticing it more. So you could just ignore it, know that it's not going to cause any defects, but yes, there is a little bit more vapor coming into the air, but nothing, a lot less than drying a t-shirt, for instance. So it's relatively benign. But if for decorative reasons you wanted to do something about it, you could use a silver or foil backed lining paper and then paint over it, or wallpaper it, or whatever. You probably want to sandpaper down just to make it smooth first. You could use damp proofing, but that would be very expensive. And frankly, the third option is probably the better one if you want to go down that route, and that is to use thermal insulating plasterboard, and you would essentially hack away the plaster, because anyway that's slightly disrupted, and replace with is PIR, which is a sort of plastic. Because you're on the ground floor, you don't have a risk of the issue of condensation forming within the wall. So if you're above a timber floor, you shouldn't do this. You should use other forms. But it may be that it's a bit thicker. You can get different thicknesses, but the benefit there is you're also getting the insulation. So it's blocking the the moisture and you're getting the insulation. You always get a slight issue around the where you stop and go on to normal plaster again. So for instance, I don't know if this is hollow in here, so you could get a bit of a risk there if you go down that route. You know, if it were me, I would probably just leave it and just accept it as part of the feature of the property, you know. But you've got a similar sort of issue here. Again, it's below ground. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not doing any damage. It's not going to be the cause of the mold.
Okay.
There'll be a very small contribution, but it's minuscule. You got the dehumidifier, but I think you need to upgrade that.
Yeah.
And you also, as you know from, so the greatest source of vapor in the property is us humans.
Yeah.
And it's about 3/4 of a litre per person per day. So you've got no ability to open the window, or you don't open the windows.
Yeah.
So, which is fine, but I would just have a bigger dehumidifier. And you're drying clothes upstairs in the same area, and vapor moves through diffusion like smoke. So the fact that you're drying clothes, if somebody was smoking upstairs, and you would soon smell it down here. So if you are drying clothes, I would use a dehumidifier next to them, or try and dry them outside as much as possible. But that's not so easy in this country.
Not at the minute, no. Okay.
So the vapor in the front area, sorry, the mold mold only results from excess vapor.
Mm-hmm.
It's made worse by heat loss, but it's not the heat loss, it's the excess vapor. So mold will grow where relative humidity goes above 85% for a long period of time, for a prolonged period of time, and the vapor is. If you do what I'm going to recommend, which is follow Joule's law, and Joule's law is to always keep the internal vapor as measured in degrees centigrade by dew point. If you keep that dew point below the outside temperature all periods of time, then the risk of mold virtually disappears. But you may do some additional things like putting a dehumidifier in there.
Yeah.
You could think about insulating the walls as well.
Yeah. Okay. And that would help?
That would help, yeah.
Okay.
I'll have a look again. So here I don't think that's going to be the primary issue though. I mean, obviously it's summertime now, and in winter you may, or it's late summer, but you may get a bit of moisture in here. But as I say, it's no different to drying a t-shirt or something like that. It's because you're close. You know, you got the bed nearby, and there's no. I mean, I would, if it were me, I would probably insulate these walls, and you can get some very inexpensive insulation. And just this is that's plasterboard. And that's probably plasterboard then. Well, you can get insulation, but there's the lack of the airflow. So even though you've got a bit of a vent, the vent there.
There's a vent here, and then there's another one. Yeah, over there. Although I have covered it with a mirror.
But it's the vapor. It's the vapor is the primary issue, and then they're made worse by heat loss. Okay. But if you follow my rules, you'll be fine. So just to explain, so we take the kitchen. You want to keep the dew point below the outside temperature. So at all times, which it is below at the moment. So the key issues are that the penetrating damp is getting through the paintwork on the outside. So you want to wire brush that back. Repaint it with an impermeable paint. You want to keep down the internal vapor levels by using a much better, much more powerful 20 litre plus dehumidifier, especially close to drying clothes. You want to monitor and maintain the dew point below the external temperature at all times, the internal dew point below the external temperature at all times. If you continue to have those damp patches, it's because they're hygroscopic salts, and the simple solution is to paint a coat of oil-based primer such as Zinza cover stain, and then you can paint whatever you want on top of that. So very simple, and think about insulation downstairs. Okay, thank you.